Welcome to Hello Plant City. I'm Arlie Smoot.
And I'm Adrian Smoot.
Our aim is to create a stronger Plant City by learning more about our neighbors in town. We'll talk with people, we'll hear stories, and we'll share ideas from all corners of the community.
And our guest today is... I'm George Hatmaker, and I live in Plant City right now, and I've been here about 4.5, actually I've been pastor of a church here since 2015. I've been here a long time. Cork United Methodist Church has been here over 100 years. So I've been a pastor for 25, 26 years now. They call me from the conferences. We got a small church in Plant City that really needs some help. They were down to an average of 30, 32 people at the time. And they said, they can't afford a full-time pastor. Will you take it part-time pay? And I said, sure. So I came here and I fell in love with that little church. I thought it was going to be interim until they found a full-time pastor. Well, a year later, they said, George, we found a full-time pastor. Will you and your wife stay? So I came out of retirement. I retired from the Marine Corps, 22 years active duty, combat veteran with combat-related injuries, and I get a good retirement from that, all my medical benefits, because I didn't need all the benefits that a church would have to pay for. Mm-hmm. And as a result, it really helped the church out. The church began to grow. Now, before the pandemic happened, we were averaging well over 100 on Sunday mornings and still growing. We had a great praise team. Wow. And the church, even now, after the pandemic, we've never closed since day one. We've remained open on location. Now, attendance has dropped severely because of the pandemic, and I understand that because people, this is totally different from what America's used to. So people had to get accustomed to that. Now, we do, even on Sunday mornings, we have headset thermometers, we have pulse oximeters, we offer people masks, and we have hand sanitizers in every pew. And we recommend social distancing. And that's working. We're averaging 45 to 50 on Sunday morning. I just had a brand new family, 2 kids just joined the church last Sunday before last. Okay. So we're still growing, even during the pandemic. We do our Bible studies now. We offer Bible studies on Tuesdays at noontime with my associate. I'm going to say his name here. I hope I don't get him in trouble. He is a retired United Methodist pastor, but he joined my church. Fred Ball, he's a great pastor himself. He does our Tuesday Bible studies. We call it brown bag Bible studies. You bring your own sandwich. Before the pandemic happened, we'd meet at the church. Everybody bring your sandwiches and come out there for Bible study.
I heard you tell stories in the past of growing other churches.
Yes.
Is that, I'll say, maybe one of your specialties of going in and finding what people want and really need?
My first church in Miami, when I first went to Florida Southern for licensed preaching, the Methodist sent me there back in 1995. My first district superintendent was a guy named James Jennings. He was retired Air Force, and I was retired Marine Corps. We got along great. And he said, George, as soon as we get a church open, we'll let you have it. I said, well, James, take a look around the Miami district, and you find a church that can't afford a pastor, and that you're going to close it. Because I was retired Marine Corps. I was making good money working at Mount Sinai Medical Center, Miami Beach, Florida. I said, if you find a church that can't afford a pastor, nothing, let me have it. And he did. Opelika United Methodist Church, right in the middle of a high crime rate area.
Our mom is from Opelika.
Really?
Yeah.
But she can attest to the crime rate they had in Opelika for a while.
Our grandfather was in the Navy, and they stayed on the
they had a naval air station right there.
Mm-hmm. That's what I lived there, yeah.
I used to go over there to the commissary.
Okay.
So I took that church. When I got there was 9 people in that church. And I was the only white boy there. It was a great church. I remember their church leader, his name was Norman Leeds, and I'll never forget Norman. He was an older guy, and he'd pull his pants up and he'd say, George, we've gotten rid of many a pastor here. We can get rid of you too.
How long did it take till he got rid of you?
I was there for 6 years.
Nice.
And if I hadn't have moved to Virginia, I'd still be there. some of the kids that we helped on the streets at that time. And this was predominantly a minority type group. I mean, we had a mixture of that community was Hispanic and Black, even African, but you know, it was a great little community. Mm-hmm. And when I first got there, we started bribing kids. I'd get out and play basketball with them. I'd offer orange juice and cookies on Sunday morning to come to Sunday school. And those little kids loved it.
These are great bribes, though.
Huh?
Those are great bribes.
Yeah. Orange juice and cookies on Sunday mornings. And the first Christmas I was there, I was going to take all the kids Christmas caroling in Opelika. And one of my church members says, George, you can't go out here at night. You're a white boy. They'll shoot you. And the people loved it. And then we got a praise team in. We got our drummers, we got guitars, I had a keyboard player. And I hired this kid. He was actually not a kid. He was 35. His name was James. 36 years old, but he was challenged. He had a real learning disability. Mentally, he was 12 years old. He could, photographic memory, I mean, he really did. He played any kind of instrument. He played keyboard, he played horns, he read any kind of music. And so he had never played Christian music before. So when I first brought him in, he looked at the book. I'd say, okay, this is a song we're going to sing today, James. He got to where in a couple of Sundays, I'd say we're going to sing hymn number 37. He'd start playing. He knew what hymn 37 was, man. He'd start playing.
Awesome.
I say, James, wait till they open their books, man. James was just an exceptional young man, but yet he was still a child. But he
had his talents and his gifts that he shared.
Yeah. God blessed him in a number of ways. Companies, I had two businesses in mind. One of them I started with a friend of mine named Fred Fenton. We started Signature Service Group. Since I worked at Mount Sinai, I was the security manager, and then I later moved up to facility services manager. In fact, I'm a founder at Mount Sinai. My names are on the wall there. My wife is a founder also there. But I met a guy scrubbing floors, Fred. He had a scrub crew, and I liked Fred. He was a good guy. I mean, he was a little older than I was. Did a little drugs, lived with a girlfriend, but I thought he was okay. I said, Fred, you got a good heart. You just got to change your way of living. Fred and I started our own business, Signature Service Group. He used me initially to get contracts for hospitals. And finally, when I got him enough contracts, we wrote proposals in my garage down in Cutler Ridge, Miami. We'd write proposals to hospitals for Fred, and he'd get to work. Finally, he says, George, I want you to leave Mount Sinai and come to work. He said, I want you to be chief executive officer of our company. I said, okay, Fred. But so we went out to Baylor Medical Institute in Dallas. We got contracts with Baylor to do all their work. We provide the employees, so we had about 600 employees there. Wow. Then I went up to Grady Hospital in Atlanta, huge hospital in Grady. We got all their work, 100 hospitals through South Florida. Fred and I went from doing zero money in my garage to making $40 million a year. And so then, because of that being so successful, and because of my background in security, and I'll get to that in just a minute, we opened a company called Signature Security Group in Miami. And we started providing uniformed security officers and private investigators. I used to teach investigators for the state of Florida.
Private investigators.
Private investigators. Okay. And we started getting contracts on security, high rises in Miami, Miami Beach, Dan Marino Children's Hospital. We provided security there. So I walked into my office one morning at 9 o'clock. It was on Tuesday morning when September 11th happened. My wife was there because she was my office manager. And she said, have you seen the news yet? And I said, no. She turned the TVs on. I got to watch the trade centers come down. So I can tell people I know where I was when the trade centers came down. And it just broke my heart to see that happen to America, you know? Well, I was supposed to have met. We got an email from them. They were still going to have a meeting. Marine Corps Criminal Investigations Division. It's CID. I was supposed to meet CID and what's now NCIS. NIS. I was special agent with both when I was in the Marine Corps. At Cherry Point, North Carolina, that weekend. So we went ahead and went up there that weekend. And my wife's sister lived in Lynchburg, Virginia. I'd never heard of Lynchburg before.
Liberty.
Up in the mountains.
Liberty University, right?
Liberty University.
Yeah.
In fact, after I lived there for a while, I got to know Dr. Jerry Falwell real good. I'll explain that in a second. So I told her, I said, listen, since we're this far north, let's go over to Lynchburg and we'll stay with your sister, see how she's doing. We got over there on a Saturday afternoon after we finished at Cherry Point, and we spent the night there at her sister's, and we got up walking around the neighborhood Sunday morning. I hadn't had that much peace in 100, I mean, my whole life had been nothing but either military, special agent, working hard in Miami, working every day of my life. I was a workaholic, you might say.
Well, yeah, if you grew a business that size,
Yeah.
I imagine.
I even had my wife working in the business. I mean, not only working as a secretary, one night I was checking posts, and most owners didn't check posts. And I surprised the security officers. And I went in one time, and one guy wasn't doing what he was supposed to. And I said, "You're fired." He says, "You don't have anybody to put on this post." I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "I'll take that post." But that's the way you have to run a business. You have to stay on top of it. But anyway, when we got over to her sister's house, as we're walking around the community that morning, and God spoke to me. He says, "Leave Miami." And I told my wife, I said, "Are you ready to move out of Miami?" She said, "Only if you buy the house next door to my sister." So it was on in a rural area, so we walked back up there, and I knocked on the lady's house next door. And she came to the door, and I said, "Ma'am, would you like to sell your house?" She fell out. She said, "Me and my husband were just talking about it. He was there on the couch."
Look at that.
Guys, we agreed on the price that day. I was back to Miami on Wednesday morning. That afternoon, I had a guy stop, and we wanted to look at the house. He said, "Do you have a realtor?" I said, "No." He said, "What do you want for it?" I told him. He said, "I'll take it." One day.
Talk about meant to be.
Yeah, he gave me exactly what I wanted for it. So we shook hands. We didn't sign any papers. We shook hands. The very next morning, another guy came in and wanted to buy it. He said, "I'll give you that." I said, "No." I said, "Some guy just shook hands on it. We agreed on the price." He said, "I'll give you $25,000 more." And I said, "No, sir, I can't." I gave him my word. And I said,
Old-fashioned handshake.
Yep, handshake's a contract.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like signing your name. We were in Virginia. Within 30 days, I was hired as associate pastor at a huge church, Timberlake, great church. But I got really frustrated with so many people. You never get to have a real intimate relationship with people when you have so many people just to shake hands on Sunday morning. That's not the way to do church. You gotta get to know your congregation. You have to get to know what their needs are. You have to. If you're in pain somewhere, I've got to find out.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, because I'll call it mega churches are increasingly popular, it feels like. And I've never, I won't say I don't understand why, but I think maybe we share the sentiment of the community that should exist and the fellowship.
They have their place, I think. But if you really want to get to know people, if you really want to teach people and see them grow and watch them grow, I don't think there's any pastor who has a congregation of 1,000 people, 1,500 people, 2,000 people can actually watch each person grow in their relationship with Christ. I want to see how God is affecting your life. I want to see what He's doing for you personally. And I want to find out why.
A lot of your stories involve that you see something in someone.
That's it.
And then bring it out of them.
When you see
opportunities, and like you did with the business too.
In business as well. And sometimes I feel guilty because I'll target business owners to be part of my church because I want them to tithe. Because God does His work. You know, God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. He has enough to feed the world. It's just in our pockets. And that's the truth. So are you going to be resourceful? Are you going to use his resources properly? So I look for people who have a passion for something. And that's what you target, their passion. The Bible has some great stories in it about healing, about Christ raising the dead, and the healing that Jesus did. And I believe all those stories. I believe they all happened the way the Bible says. And as a result that I believe those, I've actually seen God raise the dead personally. And my aunt was dying in Lakeland Memorial Hospital. She had gone through a series of incidents with something that left her on a life support system. She'd been there for about 5 or 6 months. And he called me and said the doctor was going to pull her off that, and all the family was coming over. Now, by the time I got up there from Miami, they had taken her off life support, and we got in there, and they said she's dead. The doctor's ready to sign a certificate. They took her off life support. Me and my dad went in there, and I felt her legs. They were swollen, ice cold. I mean, cold to the touch. Dad was up to her shoulders, and I was at her legs, and I held her legs, and we prayed for her, and her heart started beating. Doctors could not explain it. And brought her back to life. She lived after that. She outlived her husband. She outlived my dad.
Wow.
I thought she was going to outlive me for a while.
Would you be willing to share some of your stories from your service?
Sure. I went into the Marine Corps right out of high school. I was 18. Vietnam was going strong. I graduated actually from Winter Haven High School.
Oh. So you were originally down here?
No, well, my dad moved us down here from Tennessee. I was originally born in La Follette, Tennessee, and I was born in a little coal mining camp right outside of La Follette called Ivydale. Ivydale was a coal mining community. My dad worked at coal mines. My granddad is his brother. I remember growing up, all the houses in the coal mining camp were identical. Right beside the railroad. Now the trains would come in and load the coal, and me and my best friend at the age of 5 and 6, his name was D.D. Morgan. I'll never forget D.D. We'd go out and sit on the railroad tracks and wait for the trains to come in. We'd have to go down to the store once a week, pick groceries up, and when they couldn't afford it, they'd sign a little note. And that's how, coal miners didn't get rich back then.
Yeah.
Well, do they get rich today?
Yeah, I remember when we first left the coal mines and we moved up into a place called the Valley, going up toward Cumberland Gap. Our closest neighbor was probably about 1.5 miles away. It was in the mountains. Dad built a house himself, and he went to work for a little furniture called Winder's Furniture Company. And I remember that my dad was a boxer in the Army. He was a strong guy. He didn't go to church. None of us went to church until I was about 7 years old. And I remember my first church experience was a little church called Valley View. Back then it was Methodist, long before it became United Methodist. Valley View Methodist Church. And my sister and I went to Vacation Bible School. It was our first experience with church, but we loved it. We loved the playing with the kids mostly, But next thing I knew, Dad had give up running moonshine to Chattanooga. I remember Dad, man, he and Granddad used to run moonshine from, maybe I shouldn't tell it on live podcast.
Oh, I think, what's it called whenever, after a certain amount of time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think
running moonshine from La Follette over into Chattanooga.
Did they make it or just run it?
Oh, they made it and run it.
So he was a NASCAR driver.
Oh, yeah. And I remember that. But Dad was saved. I mean, he gave his heart to Christ. And next thing I knew, he's going to school for the churches. Next thing I knew, he's becoming a pastor. And Dad was one of the old circuit riders up in Tennessee. And he had 5 churches on a circuit one time. And that's why I ran away from home and joined the Marine Corps. I got tired of being drugged to church every my doors was open.
But you still kind of followed in his, because he was military.
Scripture is correct in saying that bring up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it. Because, Dad was in the Army, so my dad was my hero. I mean, he really was. I watched him get his high school diploma, same year I graduated. And then he went on to Emory University. But anyway, getting back to the Marine Corps. So I was in the Marine Corps right out of high school. Vietnam was going strong in 1966. I thought I'd go to Vietnam right away. But they didn't. Right out of boot camp, they sent me to communication school out in San Diego. So I went to communication school and studied communications, electronics, etc. When Tet Offensive kicked off in '68, they sent me to Vietnam in January 1968. My first unit there was 27th Marines. They were deactivated after about 3 months because we had such high casualties. We had 75% casualties. They sent the 27th Marine flags back to the U.S. And I thought, well, I'm going home. No, they sent me up north on a DMZ to 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. You look at 1st Battalion, 9th Marines in history, we were called the Walking Dead. I was medically evacuated in Vietnam in May of 1969. I was in a hospital for several months. I decided after I got out of the hospital that I had to stay in the Marine Corps. So I did. And by 1971, I was in supervisor school for military police in Augusta, Georgia. Great place, loved Augusta. And then by 1975, they were sending me to criminal investigation school with the Army out in Anderson, Alabama. So I went to school to be a special agent for the Marine Corps. Worked in many different parts of the world. I lived in Southeast Asia for 12 years.
How many languages do you speak?
I only speak one of them. I do speak some Japanese. It's been a while since I've learned like Doko ni ikimasu ka? Means where are you going? Or kore wa nan desu ka? And what is that over there? Or Isogashi desu ka? Or you've been busy today? Now, some of the best parts of it, you're talking to a young lady, you say, not to wa kidei desu ne. Means you're very beautiful. But that now, my wife speaks Spanish, and I do speak a little bit of Spanish, so we've been married 32 years. To continue with the Marine Corps, then I think it's 1980, NIS picked me up. So I was a special agent with what's now NCIS, working criminal cases. I did that until I retired in 1987.
Are there stories from NCIS that come to mind that you would like to share?
A lot of them. I don't know if I can share them.
We'll do that after the camera turns off.
Yeah.
So we've heard
a lot of them. I've worked murder cases, I've worked rape cases, I've worked robbery cases. One of the last cases I worked on, we picked up a guy for fraud initially. He was going into Marine Corps exchanges and military exchanges in the Far East and cashing checks, but they'd all been coming back bounced. And so we finally picked him up on Okinawa. I picked him up. And come to find out, he worked for the Stars and Stripes, which is a newspaper for the U.S. government. But that was a fake identity. His real identity, he had come from the Ukraine, Russia at that time. He came here as a kid, was raised here, joined the Army, became an Army intelligence officer, and was listed as killed in action in Vietnam.
Wow.
And he was picking up government information on military bases as an alternative name he was using as a reporter for the Military Stars and Stripes.
Wow.
Was that information that you shared with Russia?
That information, you track him coming from military bases since you leave them, like in the Philippines, then Clark Air Base, or in Japan, or any of the other military bases in the Far East. He'd fly straight back to Tokyo and to go to the Russian embassy.
Wow. So it was a lot more than just checks.
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible.
We had some interesting cases. Some of the best cases, though, was just before I left Okinawa, we had a series of murders on bar girls, and they were being raped and then killed. But whoever was doing it was waiting until they would close the bars, and they'd be the last one in there. But the last girl was she didn't die. She had the knife blade broke off in her nose, the bone right here. And she was able to identify him.
These were rapes and murders happening in Japan.
Yeah.
But you were part of the investigative. How does that work? Do you work with the Japanese?
We worked, at that time, we worked with the Japanese. Now, before reversion happened in probably 1980, 81, I have to look and see, because when I first got there, we had total control, total jurisdiction, especially on Okinawa. That was a U.S. territory. We hadn't given it back to Japan yet. I had a Japanese detective as a partner when I was there. So we worked closely with the Japanese police, especially if we thought that the crime was being committed by American people.
Okay.
So then we would have jurisdiction over it.
Are you comfortable talking about your injury in Vietnam?
Sure. I picked up several things. One of them was Agent Orange, which does not take effect until later on. And they found out that it was, and Agent Orange was a chemical developed to kill foliage. And what's foliage? Cells. Well, they didn't realize that, it's going to affect human cells as well. So it slowly started killing us. And as a result of that, I came down with systemic heart disease. I've had 5 bypasses as a result of that. I have diabetes and neuropathy. I am missing toes from all that. But I also picked up a blood disorder called leptospirosis, which affects the liver and kidneys. Now, I've maintained good health simply because of diet and exercise, and that's why I encourage people, get out and move. That's why I put this in.
We're in your home gym right now.
And we met in
That's
the same
right.
class.
That's why I built this, because if I don't work out and eat healthy, I'd probably be dead in 6 months. Because the leptospirosis, which stays in my blood, I can't give blood, that's for sure. I mean, it's not contagious.
Yeah.
But you don't want a transfusion from me, that's for sure.
And that's caused by the Agent Orange.
No, that's caused by bacteria that was in the jungle water. Because see, I was in the jungles. I wasn't at some back post. We were in jungles, 9th Marines. Every now and then we got to see Da Nang, and that's why I got so upset with the Air Force. They had a place right there not far from Da Nang called China Beach. You remember the movie China Beach? There was really a place out there where the Air Force could go party. They actually had girls working in the bar there. We Marines never got to see that.
You're drinking jungle water.
Oh, so we'd come back out of the jungle. We tried to get in there one night. They said we weren't coming. Well, as Marines, we went in anyway. We got into a fight there in the bar. In fact, they called the Air Force police and said, we got a bunch of Marines out here from 9th Marines. They said, they don't call us. We ain't coming down there.
You had a reputation.
And a good friend of mine, I was non-commissioned officer at Camp Lejeune. I'm going to let you know some secrets here that haven't been out before. What's statute of limitations of assault?
I think 6 months. So yeah, you're good.
Good, okay. It's been a number of years ago. I was NCIS of what we call the Security at the Gate Detachments and Shore Patrol. And one of the guys who worked for me, really good guy, he'd gone out to a bar down near the Air Wing, right outside of Camp Lejeune. And he got into a fight, and they beat him so bad. I mean, they knocked his teeth out with bar steel. After he got to the hospital, he got back with my unit. We talked to him, and so I made arrangements. One night, we went out there, and I had my whole detachment to go in 2 at a time. I told them, you guys get at the windows, you guys get to the doors.
Where is this at? I'm sorry.
This was at New River Air Station right in North Carolina. The reason I was asking statute of limitations. It was a different state, so.
Fine.
And he and I were the last ones to walk in. And as soon as we walked in, they recognized him. They started to run. We didn't give them time. We went over the bar, jerked the phone off the wall, and when we got finished, there wasn't a window left in the place.
Wow.
And nobody was left standing. And I picked one guy's head up. I said, now, the next time you want to mess with some Marines, come and see us. And we left. Now, I was sitting at a bar at the time because, when I first came back from Vietnam, I lived in bars. As a way to get over what we call combat fatigue back then. And I was sitting there and the police walked in. And the girl at the bar knew me real well. We were good friends. She says, police officer knew me too. So he says, Hatmaker, we had some Marines out here on Second Front just destroy a bar. Were you part of that? I said, I've been here all night. And she said, yeah, he has. He's been sitting here with us. And that was it. So we didn't kill anybody there. They invited me to give the opening invitation and the benediction at the 70th D-Day Memorial Birthday with all the dignitaries from these far states there. We had about, I think it's 25, 30,000 people there.
That's incredible.
Well, and I did. I wore my dress blues and I got to sit with the dignitaries, and I refused to shake hands with any of the congressmen and senators that came out there. We should not have career politicians in office. You want to know why? You know why people are protesting that? Because we do have them there, and who haven't changed things when they promised to. They've sit back and done nothing.
They get too comfortable.
So if those people who we put there would make those changes in the laws, you wouldn't have to have people taking a knee for the national anthem.
I think laws are part of it, and I think culture is part of it.
Yeah,
You can change laws. Like most of the things that I think are being protested are less about laws and more about laws being broken, not by people rioting, but by people that are in positions of power that take advantage of that power.
Are we always going to have some prejudice among people? Yes, there probably will be, no matter what, because
No matter what.
I've known where there's been prejudice blacks, prejudice Hispanics, prejudice whites. You're never going to change that. The only way you're going to change that is through education. We all bleed red, and I can guarantee you that. Because I've fought right alongside of some great black men, I worked with the ROC Marines, the Royal Republic Korea Marines. They bleed red just like we do, no matter what they are. My wife often reminds me she's not Caucasian. she is dark-skinned.
So to go back to the D-Day, so you this was in France?
This was in Virginia.
Okay.
They had the D-Day Memorial, but we had all of the dignitaries from those allied countries there with us. We had France, we had Great Britain.
And you gave the invocation?
Yeah, I gave the invitation to come and join us, and the opening, and I gave the benediction. They told me, I said, be cautious about using the name of Jesus here, but I use the name of Jesus Christ. I'm not gonna be bashful about that.
And who was it that invited you? Like, how did you get that?
Who invited me? The congressman.
Are you able to say which one?
Well, Bob Goodlack,
Okay.
who was on the big godly hearings. He was the one that I went to first, and I talked to Webb, Senator Webb.
Jim Webb.
Jim Webb.
Do you know him personally?
I met him. Jerry Falwell, who was head of the moral majority. I knew him personally. He and I were good friends, and Jerry was a very personable person. He never forgot your name once he met you. I know Jonathan, who's head of Thomas Road Baptist Church now, and Jonathan's a great pastor in his right. And his other son, Jerry Jr., who's head of Liberty University.
I think he was resigned recently. We're going to wrap up with something we call Homegrown Sense. I'm going to start it and then you finish it.
Okay.
Something I think is true that most people think is false is?
I think that the present president has worked to better America and not line his own pockets, because he gives back his total salary, president, back to help others.
I think there's a lot of people that agree with you on that. I'm not one of them, but I think there's a lot that do.
You figure what I like about him now, I don't like his mouth, but he's not a politician.
That part's true.
And I think that we should get rid of everyone who's a career politician.
There's probably a lot of people that agree with that.
Yeah.
A book or movie that has inspired me?
The true story of Jesus Christ. Not Jesus Christ Superstar.
A fascinating person in Plant City that many people don't know about is?
As a member of my church, Ron Bailey. He is head of the Bailey Family Foundation, gives out $20,000 scholarships every year to graduating seniors from Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Polk County.
Oh.
All they have to do is write a 300-word essay and tell where they've been, what their goal is in life, and what they've been doing to work toward that goal. And then the key that we look for is what have they done to give back to the community.
Where can people find out more about you or your church, whichever you'd like them to go to?
United Methodist Church Facebook. We do all of our services live on Facebook. So please join us for those on Sunday mornings. 10:30 we go live. And also for Tuesdays and Wednesdays for our Bible studies at noon and at 6 p.m. on Wednesday afternoons.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you, Adrian.
I'm grateful for everything you've done for the country and the community.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity. I hope I don't blow too many people away.
No, oh no, this is great. I just, an hour and 16 minutes. Arla's going to have fun editing this one.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, share it with friends. If you have feedback, let us know. We're on Facebook at Hello Plant City. Email us, helloplantcity@gmail.com. The music is by the talented local duo, The Birthday Saps. Thanks for listening and have a great week.